there is this term that's used called value chains, and I've put supply chains and put full value of supply chains up on the screen. So if value chains confuses you too much at the moment, just think supply chains, and over the next series of presentations, hopefully you'll get a more nuanced view of what these mean. I will take you through quite a repetitive set of slides, but I want to give you some examples of what we mean by value chains. So today, what I want to do is, in the space of about 20 minutes, is talk about today's supply chains, but I want you to get you to think about your capabilities. So what capitals do you have? What capital do you have? And what capability do you have? And how could you use that in the same way to do things better? So you use those in the sort of same mindset to do things better, or even do things differently. I'll talk about sustainability in reducing impact, but most of all, I'll talk about exploiting that value and making the most of what you've got. So hopefully by the end, you'll be thinking about adding value rather than just making money, and I'll make a difference between that as I go through. And I want you to think about all the capitals we've got in an organization, and it might be more than you realize. Some of you might be well ahead of me, and we'll give better examples. But today I want to get you to think about exploiting that capability that you've got from the capitals that you have. If I start really small and think about a core operation, and that might be a farm, or it might be a processing, or something that takes inputs of some sort and gives outputs. And most organizations will be able to, what you call, look upstream, sort of look up the river of things coming towards them. And if it's a farm, it might be all sorts of things that arrive, including seeds and other agri inputs. And then that goes downstream and somebody processes it, and customers use it. And when I said at the beginning about supply chains, think supply chains, that is the simplest supply chain you've got. You've got a supplier and you've got a customer. And I want to extend your thinking, or reinforce the existing thinking you've got around here. One thing to think about is the end of life and products, what happens to them at the end, and how they're disposed, or how they're brought back and reused. And that, what I've got going horizontally across there, is what you could call the value-adding processes. That's what your customers, or whatever you call them, your clients, that's what they pay for. But you can't do that with having all of these other things, these support processes that enable you to add the value. So if you don't have the ability to buy or to sell, then no matter what technology and skills you've got in the core processes, it's hard to make the most of them. And there's a lot of capital in that picture. I will talk about capitals in a minute. So hopefully that makes a simple basic start. And as I said, organizations use their organizational power, the people they've got, their ability to market and sell their products. And I put innovation in there, and I want to talk a little bit about innovation as we go through, but I'll skip that for the time being. Some of you might have come across the term capitals before, not just in an economic sense, but in a very wide sense. And there's 6 of them on here, and they're called the 6 capitals. And the ones on the left, you could call them the sort of financial related. So they're either the assets that you got, the equipment, the vehicles, the ground, but also the cash that is in the business. And on the right hand side, there's this thing called human capital, people, but also the social network of those people and the organizations have, as well as the knowledge and the IP, the intellectual property. And there's another capital at the bottom called the natural capital. Some of you are way ahead of me and realize that those are the 3 pillars of sustainability. So there's the finance, the social, and the environmental, three pillars of sustainability. And you might think, hold on, these are, if you've not come across these before, these are a bit strange. Yorkshire Water use these. The local enterprise partnership in North Yorkshire use these, and some businesses now use these as a way of reporting how they operate. And I really like them because they break things down. And if you think about those capitals, you start to realize there's more in an organization that you might have appreciated. So you might have physical assets that you can use to add value. But many organizations have incredible networking abilities and they have access to things. So one of your capitals could be, you know how to access a particular market. And maybe that's something you could exploit by helping other people access the same market with complementary products. So I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but if we say, let's focus on that core operation, let's say it's a farm, and there's all these assets, these capitals that can contribute to that. Well, they could contribute to the farming operation, and those assets could be sowing and harvesting equipment. It could be the knowledge of the soil. It could be the ability to know how to make the most value of the product in the market. Some businesses, we did some research during the approach to Brexit, and it was really interesting that the smaller, I call them upstream, those further away from customers, were tending to be more innovative than the big players that were quite close to the market. Because the big players, I'm generalizing here, well, it's just economics. If the product price goes up, the customer will pay more. But some of the smaller organizations were being quite innovative, and they were looking at how else can we make the most out of things. So, well, we've got a farming operation. It might be livestock. Do we just sell meat, or do we sell animals, or do we sell it direct to to customers in the general public? So that there's ways of looking at that in a much wider way, and often it's the top right hand side, the human, the social, the knowledge capitals that enable you to do some very clever things. A technical example, way out of the field, I think, of yourselves, is I used to work for a chemicals company. It was called Alcan, and some of you might recognize that, thinking, oh, that's aluminium. And this particular company, or this particular site, made white, I'll call it white powder. I'll keep the technical side out of it. They make white powder, not dodgy white powder, but white powder that you use to make aluminium. So you send it to the smelters. But they weren't big enough or cost effective enough to do that. So they changed their market offering, and they used to sell this white powder to other processes. So it used to go into paper, and it used to go into plastics. And one key thing that they realized is they were really good at formulating this white powder. They used to grind it and mix it and do all sorts of things to coat it. They used to be able to get their customers' machines to work faster. So their customer could make more money more quickly. So their immediate customers always wanted to buy off them because they had a means, an intellectual property, their innovative capabilities to help their customer be unique in the market to sell onwards. It was just an interesting look at the world of it's not just about selling a product, it's about using those knowledge skills within the business. And just a final comment on this slide is all of that financial and asset capitals, you can use those to innovate, maybe to do today's operation better, but also to think about different things in the future. So there's incremental and radical innovation you can use that capital for. So this might be a bit abstract, so I'm going to give you some examples in a minute. But the key message that I wanted to say abstractly is you've got these capitals, and you're using them to make today's products or supply today's services, trying to take a step back and think about all of those things that you've got, and think about how you can best use them. And I'll give you some examples. Some of them will scare you. Some of them will think, oh yeah, we already do that. But I'll go through some examples and see what you think. Question for you is, how does a brewery make money? I'll get you to think about this for a couple of seconds. We did a lot of work with craft brewers, and I was naive to how these businesses worked. And I really had my eyes opened about what they get up to. And the brewery obviously produces beer, so it makes money out of producing beer. But breweries are really innovative. They do other things. They run brewery tours. It's not going to make a huge amount of money, but it does reinforce their brand. If you've heard of the term brewery tap, it means you're selling beer to drink on the premises. They use their waste to make bread or pizza bases, or work with other people to take their waste to make other products. This is where some of you might get worried about this and think, I'm never entertaining anything like this. Some of the things about breweries, I was really surprised at, because one of them was talking, and he said, another brewery was struggling with how to do something, and they phoned me up and said, well, how do I get this part of the process to work? And this other brewery wasn't so far away, and he said, well, I can tell you over the phone, but it's easier if you come over and I'll show you. And I'm thinking, hold on, you've invited somebody who's potentially competitive with you into your business, but they are incredible. They have the view that if they help each other, they help collectively and grow the market. And one of the things they do is that they have gypsy or cuckoo brewers. So if they're not using their equipment for a period of time, maybe over a long weekend, another brewer will come in and use their equipment, which in some ways it's brilliant, because it makes use of all that capital. They earn extra money for it. But in other ways, it needs to be carefully controlled, because you need to make sure everything's clean so that it doesn't affect your brew following that. But it's interesting, they're selling their capital use as well as their actual beer product, and they collaborate with others to make different beers. They'll swap casks. So one brewery gives one of their casks or several of their casks to another brewery to sell to their customers, and vice versa. And it's just a really interesting way of looking at how they work together to collectively make money. I'll give you a couple more examples, and then I'll close on a big example. I'm nervous in front of people, and there might be Welsh speakers or from Wales. I would call that Pencoed in South Wales. This is a Sony factory. They used to use the entire factory to make broadcast cameras, but for various reasons, they only use part of the factory now. So they've got an incredible amount of space. And they could have either moved and sort of downsized in building, and that would have required a lot of work, or they could exploit what they've got. And I think it's really interesting that they lease out their physical space, so you can have an office, you can have manufacturing space on their shop floor, but they actually use their full capabilities of a company. And if you want help on how to make your product, they will engage with you. If you want help with distributing your product once it's made, they will work with you. Or if you're a startup company and you know how to make the product, but you don't know how to support it in the market afterwards, they can help you with that. And I think that's a really interesting business model, that they make the most of all of their capabilities, all of their capital within the organization. And they make all the Raspberry Pis. So if anybody of you are familiar with Raspberry Pis, either because you've got them at home or you've seen them in businesses, but those small computers that are actually really rather powerful for their size and simplicity. So that's another example. So it's trying to think beyond just making cameras to all of the skills that are in that business. Some of this is, it gets, you think, oh, this sails close to the law as well as, or avoids issues with the law as well as, this is quite, on one side it's innovative, on the other side it's quite a brave move. I'm in danger of putting sort of high volume bread here and getting Lydia taking me to one side and saying, what about artisan products as well and so forth. But if you walk into any supermarket, my guess is you will see those bread baskets in every single supermarket. They're all the same. It's likely that the bread baskets you see in Tesco today would be in Sainsbury's in a couple of weeks' time, would be in Morrison's a few weeks after that. These bread baskets just circulate continuously between all of the supermarkets. But every single of the major companies uses these bread baskets. And they all of the bread baskets are owned by one company that's responsible for circulating them. But the 5 top competitors own that company. So the 5 competitors in the market all got together to form this company that then both made sure that every single company in that consortium or that joint venture always had baskets, and it also meant that there was the losses of baskets for maybe people like me who puts their kids on them to go sledging when it snows or whatever, but their losses in the system dramatically dropped. So it's a really interesting one. And it's also interesting because it has knock-on effects that if you're a bread maker and you need to negotiate with a supplier, you're asking for the same specification as they supplied other people. So the costs become lower in equipment. It just has knock-on effects. I think I'm up to one of my, yeah, I've got a couple more examples. You'll be quicker if your eyesight's better than mine on these. The products you would get from sugar beet, or the product you would get from sugar beet, you might have seen this example too many times before, would be sugar. But British Sugar is incredible exploiting the value of that input material. And I don't know whether anybody has been around the site or knows a lot about it, but you'll know that they make money from soil, from stones, from electricity, all sorts of things. And so they've got a core product of sugar is the output of that factory. But they make all sorts of things. They make alcohol. And as I understand it, I could be wrong on this, but if they have a waste material and you have a technology, they will work with you to exploit it. And it's a really interesting model that they invite businesses to work with them to make the most of what's there. So they have incredibly low waste on that site. I think it's I'm going to be corrected on this one. I think they're the biggest undercover tomato producer in the UK. Is it? No. Oh, is it? Okay, it's been overtaken. Beg your pardon. But anyway, it gives you an idea of all of the things that you can make the most of. So I was pleased with the early video that Lydia had. So I wanted to put that same image up. But if you think about what you could make money from in this, and partly what I'm partly leading on to what the wider project that a lot of us are working on, is the immediate thing you can make money on is the crop. But maybe there's more things, maybe the equipment, I'm being quite simplistic on that, maybe the equipment that you see there, or maybe the person who's in that vehicle has got some incredible knowledge that there's other ways of making money from that knowledge and not just using it to crop. So there's all sorts of things you could start to exploit if you look more widely. And I wanted to close on a really interesting example. I've taken it from outside of the field, I went to visit this company called Encirc 360, and like a lot of visits, when you go to a manufacturer, they often start at the raw material end and show you what's going in at the start, and then they take you through and you follow the product. So at the start of the process, they were making glass. So sand was coming into one end of this factory, and incredibly high temperatures, so high temperature that the handrails, I couldn't hold on to them for more than about 5 seconds because it was so hot at the one part of the factory. So they produce molten glass, it's molten, they then produce bottles. Some of these bottles have got QR codes on them that you can't, I couldn't see with my eyes, but they're on there. But they produce these bottles, they test them, they then fill them, put them onto pallets. They then go to the next stage of operation, where they can fill them with whatever you want, depending on what bottles that you've been producing, and then they can distribute them for you. And what I think is really interesting about this company is the orders that come into this factory. I don't know my area around here. Is it Milton? Is probably near it. So there's Milton just near here in Cambridge. They have a Tesco's there, I think. And the Tesco's there will need a certain number of pallets delivering for their drinks. So they'll need a pallet with, I don't know, 10 cases of J2O, 5 cases of white Hardy's wine, and so forth. And they'll have a mixed requirement to go on these pallets. The orders come into this factory and say, we want all of these pallets, and we want all these different pallets filled with different cases, ready to go into the supermarket distribution depots to go direct out to each individual supermarket, and they'll do it for you. Not only that, is if the wine, maybe I shouldn't say this, but if the wine has not quite traveled as well as it should have done across the seas from far off countries, they've got the technology to make that wine good enough. So they will make sure that whatever product you want from their range of drinks will be in the right supermarket, in the right configuration. And they start with sand and tankers of drink. I just think it's a really interesting. Why wouldn't you deal with them? Because they just take all the hassle away. So they look at things as a value chain rather than as a simple supply chain. They don't supply glass. They supply configured pallets for supermarkets. So I need to finish very soon. So just to close, hopefully you've got my point about adding value and using the capitals that are in the business, and thinking about how you use those capitals to have a capability to make different impact in the market. Thank you very much.
Peter, we've got time for a couple of quick questions for Peter, if there's any quiet questions from the audience. Anybody like to ask Peter a question? In which case, I'll use my chairman's privilege. So you talked about the example of Alchem, who were identifying that the way they manufactured the white powder influenced the customers 2 steps down from them in terms of their helping their businesses. How did they do that? How did they know that? How did they find that information out? Where was the communication lines that established that?
I think there's some interesting things about their business, where a lot of the people in the business grew their careers out of the technical side of the business. So people throughout the business had been through the technology part. So they've been through the quality labs or the product development labs. So there was a lot of skills within the business about knowing what the product does. So if they were in customer services or they were in sales, they probably had some difference with the business. So when they were having that dialogue with the customer, they could pick up on technical details as well as the sort of transactional. So they could think about the opportunities. So, but I think it developed as a cultural side of the business. Of you're not just selling a product, you're selling something that you really know about and you're quite passionate about. So you pick up on the signals from the market about what they're doing with it.